You were made to be a weapon. The Imperium is very clear about this. Every document in the chapter's formal records, every catechism in the chaplain's liturgical texts, every operational briefing from every company captain across the entirety of your career describes you in terms that are fundamentally instrumental, describes you as a thing that exists to perform a function of extraordinary violence applied in the service of humanity's survival. The Imperium needs weapons. It has always needed weapons. It needs them in quantities that strain comprehension, deployed across fronts so vast that the full operational picture can only be held in minds augmented beyond the ordinary, maintained at readiness for conflicts that do not pause and do not offer terms and do not care whether the weapons arrayed against them are tired or grieving or have been doing this for 200 years and are quietly, in the private hours, not entirely sure what they are for anymore. You are that weapon. You were made for this. But you are also the person who was made for this, the consciousness that was doing something else before the recruiting team arrived, the being who has been present for everything described in this account and who has opinions about it, who has private thoughts about it, that the chaplains would want to discuss and that the Inquisition might want to document, and that are simply yours, carried in the fortress of your own skull alongside everything else you carry. Both of these things are true simultaneously. The weapon and the person inside it. The function and the consciousness that serves the function and observes it being served and thinks about what the serving means. The Space Marine of the doctrinal texts and the specific individual who wears that title and inhabits it in the specific way that only this particular combination of history and genetics and experience and private thought can produce. This is the final thing about it being hard to be a Space Marine. Not the physical things, not the 19 organs or the weight of the armor or the centuries of war, but this. You are the most powerful individual soldier humanity has ever produced, and you are also a person, and there is no resolution offered between those two facts. No moment when the institution tells you how to be both at once without the one consuming the other. You find your own resolution. You find it in the squad, and in the watch, and in the accumulated weight of the years, and in the private practice of carrying the names, and in the knowledge, arrived at without being given it, that the work matters, and the cost is real, and the meaning is not provided, but can be built from the inside, by someone who has been here long enough to understand what it is made of. Let us begin with a simple fact. You are 8 feet tall, encased in a walking tank made of ceramite and adamantium, genetically enhanced beyond anything a normal human being could conceive of, capable of ripping a battle tank apart with your bare hands, immune to most known poisons, able to survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, possessed of a secondary heart that kicks in when your primary one stops, and you are still, somehow, deeply and fundamentally miserable. This is the central paradox of being a Space Marine in the 41st millennium. You are the most powerful individual soldier the human species has ever produced. You are also, if you examine the situation honestly and without the reflexive piety that your chaplains have been drilling into you since adolescence, having an absolutely terrible time. Nobody tells you this when they recruit you. They cannot really, because you are 13 years old and living in a hive city under hive, or a feudal world village, or a death world settlement, and the recruiters who come for you are the most magnificent and terrifying things you have ever seen, and the offer they are making you seems, from where you are standing at that age, like the most extraordinary gift anyone has ever offered anyone in the history of the human species. You will be strong, they say. You will be fast. You will never fear again. You will serve the God Emperor of mankind and carry his light into the darkest corners of the galaxy, and the enemies of humanity will tremble at the sound of your name. What they do not say, because it would probably reduce recruitment numbers, is the full list of what this involves, and that list is very, very long. So settle in, close your eyes. Let us walk through the entire magnificent catastrophe of a Space Marine's existence, from the moment they pull you out of whatever grimdark situation you were surviving in before they found you, to the moment, centuries later, when you finally stop moving. And even then they will probably just put what remains of you in a very large and extremely aggressive metal box and keep sending you to war. Because nothing in the Imperium of Man is ever allowed to simply stop, not even you, especially not you. This is why it sucks to be a Space Marine. The world you left behind does not stop existing when you leave it. This is obvious, and also, in the specific emotional context of being 13 years old and told you are leaving forever, not obvious at all. The people you knew continue, the place continues. The particular light at a particular time of day that you saw 10,000 times without noticing continues to fall on surfaces you will never see again, and the conversations you were part of continue without you, and the small frictions and affections and rivalries of the life you lived there resolve in one direction or another without your involvement. You are not there to see any of it. You left too quickly and too completely, and in circumstances that did not allow for a proper ending, and the absence of a proper ending is something that you will carry for years before you stop noticing that you are carrying it. The training monastery, wherever it is the first place you understand to be definitively different from everything that came before. Not better or worse, not immediately, just different in the specific and total way that only places built for a single purpose feel different. Places where everything present exists to serve the function, and everything not present was removed because it did not. There are no unnecessary things in a Space Marine training facility. There is no comfort that does not serve capability. There is no ease that does not serve readiness. The architecture itself communicates this. The high ceilings designed to accommodate beings who are in the process of becoming 8 feet tall. The corridors wide enough for powered armor when eventually the powered armor comes. The training cages built to withstand forces that human beings should not be capable of generating, but that the beings trained in them will eventually generate as a matter of routine. You begin to change physically almost immediately. Not dramatically, not overnight, but the training regime combined with the nutrition provided and the specific early-stage preparations for the implants that are coming begin to alter your body in ways that you notice as they happen. The muscles developing faster and with more completeness than ordinary adolescent development, the reflexes sharpening in response to training that pushes them toward their limits every day. You are not yet enhanced. You are simply being prepared for enhancement, your baseline raised to the highest point it can reach before the formal process begins, so that the formal process has the best possible material to work with. You meet the others who were recruited at the same time. There are more of you than will survive to full initiation, which is something you understand intellectually before you understand it experientially, before you watch the ones who cannot keep up fall away from the program one by one in ways that the training masters note with the same professional neutrality they bring to everything. You do not become close to the ones who fall away, because the culture of the program does not encourage the development of attachments that may be severed, and because the pace of the training does not leave time for the kind of prolonged social interaction through which ordinary human closeness develops. You know them as training partners and as competition, as the bodies next to yours in the training cage, as the voices reciting the same litanies you are reciting in the dormitory block in the hour before lights out, and you begin to understand what the litanies mean, not their surface meaning, which is clear enough, but their function. What they are for, why an institution that has been running this program for 10,000 years decided that daily recitation of texts describing the virtues of the God Emperor and the duties of his servants was an essential component of the training rather than an optional supplement. The litanies are not information delivery. They are not teaching you facts you could not learn from a data slate. They are establishing a pattern, a rhythm of thought and response, a groove in the cognitive landscape that prayer and repetition wear deeper with each recitation until the groove becomes the path that your mind takes automatically when it needs to navigate the kind of darkness that a Space Marine's life contains in abundance. You will need that groove. You do not know this yet. You will know it later when the darkness arrives, and the groove is the thing that keeps you moving through it. The selection process begins with tests. This seems reasonable until you understand what the tests actually involve. The Adeptus Astartes recruiting teams that visit worlds in search of candidates have been doing this for 10,000 years, which means they have had 10,000 years to optimize the testing process, and what 10,000 years of optimization produces when the goal is to identify which adolescent boys have the physical and psychological potential to survive the transformation into a post-human killing machine is a series of trials that would be considered war crimes if conducted against adults by anyone other than Space Marines. On some worlds, the tests are formal. You are brought to a facility and measured and assessed by apothecaries with devices that scan your genetic profile and neurological patterns and 100 other variables that you cannot see and would not understand, even if you could. They check your bone density and your reaction time and the specific configuration of your neurological pathways that indicates psychic resilience, because a Space Marine who is susceptible to warp influence is a Space Marine who is susceptible to the oldest and most persistent recruitment campaign in the galaxy, the one the Chaos Gods have been running for 10,000 years. They check your psychological profile in ways that a 13-year-old cannot fully understand or meaningfully misrepresent, because the instruments do not ask you what you think or feel. They simply measure the biochemical markers of what you actually think and feel, and they compare those markers against the profile that 10,000 years of data collection has established as compatible with successful Astartes development. On other worlds, the tests are less formal. They release a pack of something very dangerous into the area where the potential recruits are gathered and see who survives. On Death Worlds, this is barely distinguishable from a normal Tuesday. On Hive Worlds, it produces a very specific kind of chaos in the Underhive that the Administratum quietly notes in its records under the category of recruitment activity and files next to the paperwork for the inevitable cleanup. You pass the tests. Of course you pass. You are the one whose story this is, which means you were one of the fraction of a percent of candidates who had what the apothecaries were looking for. You feel good about this. You feel chosen. You feel special. You are 13 years old, and the most impressive beings you have ever seen have just told you that you are extraordinary. And that feeling of being selected and elevated and seen is one of the last genuinely uncomplicated positive emotions you are going to experience for the rest of your life, which is going to be very, very long, so you should have savored it more. They take you away from everything you know. This is not a side effect of recruitment. This is a deliberate feature of it. A Space Marine cannot be attached to his previous life, because attachment to a previous life creates divided loyalty, and divided loyalty is a liability that a 10,000-year-old military institution that has survived civil wars and Xenos invasions and the literal corruption of half its founding legions has learned to take very seriously. The boy who grew up in that settlement, who had a mother and a father, or some approximation thereof, who had friends and rivals and a place in the particular small social world of wherever he came from, that boy is going to be disassembled and rebuilt, not metaphorically and physically, both at the same time, continuously. You do not know this yet. You are 13 and you are riding in a gunship that is louder than anything you have ever experienced and faster than anything you imagined could exist. And outside the viewport, if there is one, you can see your world getting smaller, and you feel the particular combination of terror and exhilaration that is the appropriate emotional response to leaving everything you have ever known at speed. You will not feel that combination again for a long time. You will feel terror plenty. The exhilaration is going to be rationed very carefully going forward. The world you left behind does not wait for you. This is something that the Astartes culture handles with the same institutional efficiency it brings to everything, which is to say that it names the loss and files it, and does not dwell on it, because dwelling is a luxury, and a Space Marine does not have luxuries. The training will confirm this in case the departure did not. The training will confirm it every day in small ways and large ones, in the grinding accumulation of hours and pain and instruction that is designed not just to make you capable, but to make you the kind of person for whom capability is the primary value, the measure against which everything else is assessed. You will become very capable. You will also become, in ways that take years to fully understand, someone who the 13-year-old you left on that world would not entirely recognize. There are 19 implants. Let us go through them, because the full list, delivered with appropriate weight and specificity, is the kind of thing that deserves to be understood in its entirety rather than summarized. The Adeptus Mechanicus has maintained the standard template construct for Space Marine implantation for 10,000 years, and the procedure has been performed so many times on so many recruits across so many worlds that the apothecaries who conduct it have developed the particular quality of total professional competence combined with complete emotional detachment that characterizes anyone who does something extraordinary so many times it becomes routine. You do not have the luxury of finding it routine. You are experiencing it for the first time. The secondary heart goes in and is in some ways the kindest of the 19 because what it does is simply add a backup for something you already have. When your primary heart is damaged or stops, the secondary one takes over. This seems straightforwardly good until you realize that the reason you need a backup heart is because your life is going to involve enough direct trauma to your cardiovascular system to make a backup heart a reasonable medical investment rather than an extraordinary precaution. The os modular follows, and this is where things become less comfortable. Your skeleton starts to change, not subtly. Your bones become denser and harder than ordinary human bone, reinforced to the point where they can withstand impacts that would shatter normal human skeletal structure. You grow, not in the gradual way of ordinary adolescent development, but in the specific way of something being reshaped according to a blueprint, your body expanding and thickening and becoming, over months and years of the process, the barrel-chested, enormous-limbed structure that will eventually stand inside the power armor. It hurts. The apothecaries will confirm, if you ask them directly, and they are feeling unusually honest, that the skeletal restructuring phase of implantation is one of the more painful components. They will say this in the same tone they use to discuss precipitation levels on training worlds, which tells you everything you need to know about the culture you are being inducted into. The Biscopeia drives the extraordinary muscular development. The Haemastamen alters your blood biochemistry for improved performance. The Laraman's organ makes your blood clot almost instantly when exposed to air, which is very useful for a creature that is going to spend a great deal of time being shot. The catalepsian node goes into your brain and alters your relationship with sleep. With it active, you can achieve the restorative effects of sleep while remaining fully conscious, resting one hemisphere while the other remains alert. You will never again be genuinely unconscious in the way that ordinary people are unconscious during sleep. You will always, on some level, be there, always aware. For the rest of a very long life that is going to involve sustained vigilance and the specific exhaustion of someone who cannot truly switch off, you will carry the catalepsian node as a permanent reminder that even rest for a space marine is a modified and managed and never entirely complete thing. The preomnor lets you eat poisons without dying. The homophagia lets you gain information by consuming the flesh of a creature. Yes, consuming. Absorbing memories through the genetic material you ingest. The apothecaries have long since stopped expecting any particular reaction to explaining it. The multi-lung provides you with a third lung that can filter toxic atmospheres. The oculobe enhances your visual processing. The Lyman's ear gives you control over your own hearing sensitivity and makes you immune to disorientation from explosions, which is extremely relevant. The Susan membrane allows you to enter suspended animation when sufficiently damaged, preserving your vital functions until medical attention arrives, which is a useful feature in a career that involves being sufficiently damaged with considerable regularity. The melanochrome protects your skin against radiation. The oolitic kidney filters your blood with extraordinary efficiency. The neuroglottis turns your sense of taste into a chemical analysis laboratory. The mucranoid alters your sweat glands for vacuum sealing. The Becher's gland gives you an acid spit capability, which is exactly what it sounds like and is occasionally described in recruiting materials for certain chapters as a bonus feature rather than a biological weapon installed in your face. And finally, the black carapace, the most important of all 19, the dense subdermal layer of artificial neural tissue that grows across your chest and back and interfaces with the power armor's systems, allowing you to feel the armor as an extension of your own body, to wear it not as a suit but as a second skin. This process takes years. There are chapters that run their candidates through the full suite of implantations as quickly as biology allows, and there are chapters that prefer a more gradual approach. But there is no version of it that is quick in any meaningful sense, and there is no version of it that is comfortable. You are being remade. The 13-year-old who arrived is not the being who will emerge. Every major system has been augmented, replaced, or supplemented. The blood is different, the bones are different, the muscles are different, the sensory apparatus is different, the brain is different. You are, in the technical biological sense, a different organism than you were, and you have not yet touched the armor or the weapons or set foot on your first battlefield. This is just what they did to prepare you for those things. The training that accompanies the implantations is its own category of unpleasant. The scouts who supervise the neophytes in the training cages have been doing this for long enough that they have developed the specific pedagogical philosophy of people who believe that suffering is the most efficient teacher, and who are not wrong about this in the narrow technical sense, because the neophytes who survive the training do so by learning with a completeness and permanence that more comfortable educational approaches do not achieve. You learn the bolter, you learn the chainsword, you learn the combat knife and the frag grenade and the crack grenade and the melter charge and 24 other tools of destruction, each one learned not to the standard of competence, but to the standard of reflex, learned so deeply into the body that the knowledge lives below conscious thought and does not require conscious thought to access under fire. You learn doctrine. The Codex Astartes, that vast text written by the Primarch Robout Guilliman in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, and now the organizing document of most Space Marine chapters, contains tactical doctrines refined over 10,000 years of application and revision, the accumulated wisdom of humanity's greatest warriors distilled into principles that can be applied across the enormous variety of combat situations that a Space Marine will encounter in a career of indefinite length. You learn it in the abstract and you practice it in the training cages, and you will apply it in the field and discover that the gap between doctrine and reality is always present, always requires navigation, always demands the judgment that cannot be coded into any document, however comprehensive. You learn about your enemies. The Xenos threat briefings alone would take weeks to cover in full. The Ordo Xenos having catalogued hundreds of alien species that have come into hostile contact with the Imperium across its history, each species with its own biology and psychology and tactical preferences and specific vulnerabilities that must be understood to fight it effectively. The Orcs, the Eldar, the Dark Eldar, the Tyranids, the Necrons, the Tau, the Kroot, the Vespid, the Fra'al and the Loxatl, and 100 others that your briefings cover in diminishing detail as you move from the major threats to the regional ones, and the heretics, the cultists, the renegades, the traitor space marines of the 9 Chaos Legions who turned with Horus and who have spent 10,000 years in the Eye of Terror, becoming something that is harder to name than simply the enemy. And worse, the greater demons of the chaos gods and the demon engines and the corruption that spreads through populations given the right conditions, the specific vulnerability of any sufficiently large concentration of human beings under sufficient stress to the whispers of the warp. You learn this all. And then, when the apothecary confirms your implants have taken hold and the training masters confirm your combat capability has reached the required standard, you go to war. The scout phase of Space Marine development is the period during which a neophyte who has received most of his implants but not yet been issued his full power armor is deployed in active but theoretically lower risk situations to develop the practical combat skills that no amount of training in the chapter's Fortress Monastery can replicate in theory. In practice, the distinction between lower risk and normal Space Marine combat operations is primarily semantic. You wear a scout suit. This is lighter armor than the full ceramite plate of the Astartes, designed for mobility and concealment rather than the grinding frontal assault that power-armored Space Marines are best known for. The scout suit feels, after the months and years of physical training you have undergone, like no protection at all, like wearing clothing in a hailstorm and being told that the clothing is protective because it is technically between you and the hail. Your body is already very different from what it was. The implants that have taken hold are already doing their work. You are already stronger and faster and more durable than any unaugmented human being you are likely to encounter. But you are not yet what you are going to be, and the veteran sergeants who supervise the neophyte phase are very clear about this, usually by placing you in situations that demonstrate your current inadequacy with considerable specificity. The missions scout squads are deployed on are real, actual reconnaissance behind enemy lines, actual infiltration operations in hostile environments, actual combat situations where actual enemies with actual weapons that can actually kill you are present and motivated. You are not practicing. The Imperium does not have the luxury of practicing. There are too many enemies and too few Space Marines, and every asset that can be deployed must be deployed, which means that neophytes who have not yet received their full suite of implants and who are wearing light armor and carrying a bolter and a combat knife are absolutely being sent into situations that a reasonable medical professional would describe as inappropriate for someone whose development is still ongoing. Some of you will not survive. This is built into the calculation. The chapter masters and master apothecaries who design the scout programs have, over thousands of years of running them, arrived at loss rates that are considered acceptable for the development of the neophytes who do survive, the losses functioning as a final selection filter that removes candidates who lack some quality, some specific combination of ability and will and adaptability that all the earlier testing and training and surgery failed to identify as absent. The candidates who die in scout operations died because they were not quite right, which is a terrible thing to be when being not quite right means dying on a hostile world at the age of 16 or 17 or 18. You survive. Because you are the one whose story this is, and because the qualities that got you selected and got you through the implantation process are the same qualities that get you through the scout phase. You survive and you learn. And the things you learn in the scout phase are not exclusively the things listed on the formal training curriculum. You learn how the Imperium actually works. You are young enough, and the scout phase places you in enough proximity to populations of ordinary human beings to see the reality of the civilization you are being trained to defend with a clarity that the formal indoctrination of the training monastery does not entirely prepare you for. You see the hive cities from the inside, not from the gunship viewport, but from the streets, the impossible density of human suffering in the middle and lower levels, the billions who live and die without ever seeing sky or horizon. You see the administratum going about its functions with the quality of an institution that has been operating for 10,000 years, which is to say with the quality of something that is simultaneously vast and impressive and broken in ways that everyone within the system has made their accommodation with. You see the Arbites maintaining order in ways that prioritize order over justice in the specific calculus of institutions that have long since had to choose between the two. You see the ecclesiarchy and its relationship with the populations it serves, the genuine faith and the genuine comfort it provides coexisting with the corruption and the excess and the political calculation that accumulated over 10 millennia of institutional power. You do not say anything about this. You learn the same lesson that every Space Marine learns in the scout phase. which is that the gap between the Imperium, as it is described in the litanies, and the Imperium, as it actually exists, is large enough to build a hive city in, and that acknowledging this gap even internally is a thing that you must manage carefully and privately for the rest of your life. This is the first great cognitive task of being a Space Marine. The training programs do not address it, because addressing it would require admitting that it exists. Power armor is old, not old in the way that a building or a weapon is old, not old in the way that any physical object accumulates age through use and wear. Power armor is old in the way that certain institutions and certain relationships are old, which is to say that the age is the most important thing about it, that the years and centuries, and in some cases millennia of history embedded in the particular suit assigned to a Space Marine are as much a part of what the armor is as the ceramite plates and the power plant and the servo motors. Your chapter's armory contained suits of power armor that were fighting battles when the Emperor was still walking among his sons. There are pauldrons that were present at the Siege of Terra. There are helms that looked upon the faces of Primarchs. There are breastplates that stopped bolter rounds fired by brother Space Marines during the Horus Heresy over 10,000 years ago, and the impact craters are still there. Not repaired because the tech priests of the Armorium consider them sacred, the evidence of history too precious to smooth away. The power armor of a chapter carries the weight of its history in a very literal sense. When you put it on, you are wearing everything that has been done in it, every battle and every death and every victory, 10,000 years of continuous use pressed into the ceramite by the accumulated weight of what it has been through. The suit that is assigned to you fits, not in the way that clothing fits, because it is not clothing, but in the way that the black carapace was designed to make it fit. The neural interface engaging with a completeness that takes your breath away the first time it happens. The feedback from the armor's sensors integrating with your own senses in a way that is disorienting for approximately 3 seconds and then feels like breathing, like something that was always supposed to happen and is only now happening for the first time. You raise your arm and the armor raises its arm, not in response to your movement, but as an expression of your intent. The suit reading the neural command that preceded the physical movement and acting on it in concert. You are not wearing the armor. You are, in the functional sense, the armor. The ceramite is your skin. The servos are your muscles, the sensors are your eyes and ears, and the specific tactile awareness of the black carapace pressed against your chest and back. The suit smells of incense and machine oil and something older, the olfactory signature of decades or centuries of use, and the biochemistry of the Space Marines who wore it before you. You will add your own chemistry to it. You will add your own history. The suit will carry traces of you long after you are gone, the same way it carries traces of everyone who wore it before. And the tech marine who maintains it and the chaplain who blesses it are engaged in acts of preservation that are also acts of continuity. You will sleep in this armor, not every night in the early stages, but over time, as campaigns extend and supply lines stretch, and the operational tempo of a chapter at war makes the luxury of removing your armor for sleep increasingly unavailable. You will learn to sleep in it to achieve the modified rest that the catalepsian node makes possible while sealed in ceramite. The suit's environmental systems manage your biological requirements while you rest one hemisphere of your brain at a time. You will eat in this armor when circumstances require. You will perform bodily functions in this armor because the designers of the suit, who were not naive about the conditions it would be used in, incorporated systems for managing exactly those requirements. This is not the dignified image presented in the chapter's iconography. This is the operational reality of a being who is sometimes at war for months without pause, and who does not have the luxury of the ordinary human rituals of privacy. The armor will be damaged. Everything about a Space Marine's existence confirms that the armor will be damaged, and it will be damaged seriously, and the tech marines who repair it will work with the careful attention of people who understand that what they are restoring is not merely equipment, but the ongoing capacity of the chapter to exist. Each repair is conducted according to the rituals of maintenance. the litanies of preservation, the specific prayers that the Adeptus Mechanicus prescribes for every category of mechanical intervention. The machine spirit of the armor, that animating principle that the Mechanicus holds to be real and that gives individual suits of power armor their specific behavioral characteristics, must be consulted and appeased and thanked when the repairs are complete. This is not theater. The machine spirits are real in the sense that their effects on the armor's performance are measurable and consistent, whatever the philosophical argument about their nature might be. You develop a relationship with your armor's machine spirit over the years of wearing it, a relationship that is genuinely difficult to describe to someone who has not experienced it. The armor has preferences. The armor has a kind of personality that expresses itself in the subtle ways it responds to different combat situations, the slightly different quality of its performance under varying conditions. You learn to read these qualities and to work with them, to factor the armor's tendencies into your tactical decisions, to treat it as a partner in what you are doing rather than a tool you are operating. The chaplains say this is the Emperor's grace expressed through the mechanisms of war. The Tech Marines say it is a natural property of sufficiently complex machine systems that have been operating for long enough in human-adjacent environments. You do not have a firm position on the theology. You simply know that the armor responds better when you treat it with respect. A Space Marine does not fight alone. The basic tactical unit of the Adeptus Astartes is the squad, and the squad functions as a unit because the bonds between its members are real and deep and forged in the crucible of shared experience that cannot be replicated by any other means. Your squad brothers are not your friends in the way that ordinary people have friends. The word friend implies choice, implies the optional nature of the connection. You did not choose your squad brothers, and they did not choose you. You were assigned to each other by a chapter master or company captain operating according to assessments of capability and temperament that you were not party to, and the relationship that subsequently developed was not built on preference but on necessity. There is Sergeant Draven, who has been in the 50th Company for 40 years and who leads the squad with a combination of tactical competence and personal authority that is built from 4 decades of the specific experience of keeping Space Marines alive in situations designed to kill them. His emotional vocabulary does not include words that refer to doubt or uncertainty, because he decided at some point in the last 4 decades that those qualities were not going to serve him, and he removed them from his operating consciousness with the same thoroughness that the chapter's apothecaries bring to removing foreign matter from a wound. He is not unkind. He is simply someone for whom the work is the entirety of the context and everything else is noise. There is Brother Kellyan, who was recruited from a feudal world and carries the cosmological framework of his birth culture somewhere inside himself, alongside the imperial liturgy installed over it. 2 belief systems occupying the same space in ways that occasionally surface in the moments before a drop pod launch, when he goes still and quiet in a way that has nothing to do with the chaplain's pre-battle blessings. Kellyan has been next to you in 27 engagements and has saved your life on 3 of them in ways that required no discussion afterward, no acknowledgement, because saving each other is simply what they do. There is Brother Theron, the quietest member of the squad, whose silence is not the silence of emptiness, but of depth, the silence of someone who processes everything and says very little, and whose assessments of situations, when he does speak, have a precision that makes you wish he spoke more often. Theron has the quality that you have observed in several Space Marines who have been serving for a certain length of time, a quality of having seen so much that the ordinary texture of experience has become difficult to disturb, the surface of his attention a very still pond that requires increasingly large objects to produce a ripple. There is Brother Avarice, the youngest, who still has the genuine engagement with novelty that the older members have lost, who still finds things extraordinary that everyone else has long since filed under routine, whose enthusiasm for the chapter's traditions has not yet been worn down to the comfortable and slightly mechanical participation that characterizes his seniors. You were like Avarice once. You remember being like Avarice. You are not entirely sure whether watching him is nostalgic or simply sad, and the distinction feels important in a way you have not resolved. The Fortress Monastery of a Space Marine chapter is the most impressive building most human beings will never see. This is not hyperbole. The fortress monasteries that house the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes are the largest and most heavily fortified structures that their respective worlds contain, designed to serve simultaneously as the chapter's administrative center, training facility, armory, shrine, hospital, library, and the last defensive position that any invading force would reach if it reached the surface at all, which the orbital defenses and the chapter's fleet are specifically designed to prevent. They are built by and for beings who are 8 feet tall and who have been at war continuously for 10,000 years, and they look like it. The corridors of the Fortress Monastery are wider than necessary for ordinary human beings, but exactly right for power-armored space marines, a detail that communicates every time you move through them the specific nature of what you are and what this place is built for. The ceilings are high enough to accommodate dreadnoughts in their normal operational configuration, which means they are high enough to give an ordinary human being genuine vertigo looking up at them. The stone of the walls is not the pressed rockcrete of a hive world's construction, but the specific ancient masonry of a structure that has been built and rebuilt and added to over centuries. The different periods of construction visible in the different qualities of stone and the different architectural styles that mark the work of different eras. The armory occupies an entire level of the main structure and is tended by tech marines who move through it with the specific attentiveness of people whose entire professional identity is organized around the maintenance of the weapons and armor in their care. The weapons racks contain bolters in their hundreds, each one maintained to operational readiness at all times, each one with a maintenance record going back to the date of its manufacture. The armor bays hold suits of power armor in various stages of maintenance and repair, some actively being worked on by tech marines reciting the litanies appropriate to the specific repair being performed, others sealed in preservation canisters waiting for the next deployment that will require them. The more ancient and important pieces of war gear are kept in separate secured bays with additional layers of maintenance protocol, the relics of the chapter's history treated with the reverence that their accumulated significance demands. The Reclusium is where the chaplains work. It is a combination of chapel and administrative complex and archive, the spiritual center of the chapter's life, and the physical location where the records of its members' spiritual development are maintained. The wall of the Reclusium, closest to the altar, is covered in the names of fallen chapter members, maintained in order of their death and dating back to the chapter's founding. The names so numerous after centuries and millennia of service and loss that the text is no longer humanly readable without augmentation, the individual names requiring magnification to distinguish from the overall texture of inscription that covers the stone. There are candles burning in the Reclusiam at all times, tended by chapter serfs whose entire service to the chapter consists of this one function, the maintenance of the continuous flame that the chaplains interpret as the ongoing presence of the emperor's attention. The apothecarian is where the apothecaries work, the medical and genetic facility that manages the implantation process for neophytes and the ongoing health maintenance of serving battle brothers, and the recovery operations for the wounded and the progenoid gland harvesting that is the final service a dead marine renders his chapter. It smells of antiseptic and sacred oils and the specific clinical quality of medical facilities everywhere, and it is staffed by apothecaries whose medical training is the most comprehensive available in the Imperium, exceeding even the best medici facilities on major Imperial worlds, because the bodies they maintain are among the most complex and valuable biological systems in existence, and the Imperium cannot afford the losses that inadequate medical care would produce. The library, called the Librarium in chapters that follow the Codex naming conventions, contains the chapter's accumulated records and histories and tactical analyses and doctrinal texts maintained by chapter serfs under the direction of the senior librarians and available to battle brothers at need. The oldest sections of the librarium are sealed and accessible only to the most senior members, not because the information they contain is operationally sensitive, but because the accumulated weight of what 10,000 years of chapter history looks like from inside is considered psychologically difficult for warriors who are still in the early phases of their careers, who need to build their sense of purpose before they confront the full scope of what they are part of. You live in this place in the periods between deployments, which are shorter than you would wish and longer than nothing. The specific rhythm of a military life that is never entirely not deployment, but is also, in the intervals, something that has the texture of ordinary existence, even if ordinary existence has been defined down from what it meant before you came here. You eat with your squad in the communal refectory, the food adequate and calibrated to your biological requirements, and entirely without the character that food has when it is prepared by someone who cares about the eating of it. You sleep in the dormitory blocks, designated for your company, the individual cells, small and plain and identical, the personal effects that accumulate in them over years of service, the only evidence of the specific person inhabiting each space. You maintain your equipment in the armory bays assigned to your squad, the maintenance routines that the training established as essential, having long since become as automatic as breathing. And in the intervals between these routines, in the hours when there is genuinely nothing that requires your attention, you find yourself confronting something that the training did not entirely prepare you for, which is the experience of having nothing to do. Space Marines are not well designed for leisure. The entire architecture of your existence is organized around activity, around readiness, around the ongoing maintenance of capability, and the anticipation of deployment. When the deployment is over and the capability has been maintained, and there is simply time, open time with no mission and no drill and no assignment, the experience of it is uncomfortable in a way that takes years to navigate. Some Space Marines use this time for study, deepening their knowledge of the chapter's history and the Imperium's wider context in ways that the operational pace of active deployment does not permit. Some use it for the kind of solitary physical practice that has no tactical objective, but is simply the expression of a body designed for movement through movement itself. Some use it for the rituals of their faith in ways that are more private and less performative than the communal worship of the regular schedule, sitting alone in the reclusium in the small hours and doing whatever it is that they do when no one is watching and the formal requirements of piety have been satisfied, and what remains is whatever their actual relationship with the Emperor looks like in its unperformed form. You use some of this time for something that you do not describe in any formal record and that you have never mentioned to the chaplains, which is simply thinking, sitting with your own thoughts in a way that the operational life does not allow and that the training did not cultivate and that you have had to develop on your own over years as a kind of private practice of exactly the kind of questioning that the litanies and the chaplains and the culture generally suggest is not the appropriate occupation for a Space Marine's leisure hours. You think about the things that are complicated. You turn them over. You do not arrive at conclusions that resolve the complications because the complications are not that kind of problem. You simply become more familiar with their shape, more accustomed to their weight, more able to carry them without being bent by carrying them. This is, you have come to believe, what the fortress monastery is for at its deepest level, not the armory and not the apothecary and not even the training facilities, though all of these are essential. It is the container for this, for the private and ongoing work of a consciousness that is doing something very difficult over a very long time and needs somewhere to be while it does it. The stone walls and the ancient corridors and the candles burning in the reclusium and the names of the fallen inscribed in text, too small to read at normal resolution, all of it providing the specific kind of permanence and continuity that a Space Marine needs in the background while everything in the foreground is chaos and war and loss. These are your brothers. You will fight beside them for years, for decades, in the longer careers for centuries. The bond that develops between Space Marines over that kind of shared service is something that the Imperium has never found adequate words for, which is why the chaplains default to religious language and call it brotherhood and invoke the Primarchs and the will of the Emperor, because the religious language is at least gestural toward the reality, even if it does not capture it. The reality is that you are in a relationship with these men that is more intimate than most human beings experience with anyone, because you have been in situations with them where the next 5 seconds determined whether any of you continued to exist, and that kind of shared extremity leaves marks that do not fade, and then one of them dies. This is not a possibility, this is a certainty. In a career of any meaningful length, you will watch your brothers die, and the experience of this is something that the chaplains prepare you for, and the training prepares you for, and the culture of the chapter prepares you for in every possible way, and none of that preparation is adequate. It is never adequate. The day you lose your first squad brother is the day the list begins, and the list gets longer, and you carry it, and you keep going, because stopping is not something that is available to you. The chapter has rituals for death. The chaplains have specific words for it, words refined over 10,000 years of use to do the maximum amount of the required work in the minimum possible time, because the practical demands of a chapter at war do not allow for extended mourning. The apothecary recovers the progenoid glands from the fallen before anything else, because the genetic continuity of the chapter is the practical priority and everything else is secondary to it. You say the words that the ritual prescribes and you move on, and the moving on is not callousness. It is the specific and necessary discipline of beings who would be paralyzed by accumulated grief if they permitted themselves the time to feel each loss in full. But the losses are not gone. They do not go anywhere. They become part of the weight you carry, and the weight gets heavier, and you develop the capacity to carry more weight, and the capacity developing and the weight increasing stay in a rough equilibrium that the chaplains and the apothecaries and the entire support structure of the chapter work to maintain. This is perhaps the most important invisible labor of a Space Marine chapter, the ongoing management of the psychological weight of 10,000 years of continuous loss in warriors who cannot stop to put it down. There are rituals between squad members that the chapter has no formal name for because they were not designed. They simply accumulated over years of shared service in the way that any close-knit group of people who have been through things together accumulates practices that address what the official culture does not. The way you check each other's seals before a drop, the specific order and the specific touches that the squad has developed across hundreds of deployments into a sequence that takes less than 2 minutes and that each of you could perform on the others in complete darkness, the physical verification of each other's readiness that is also in the way of things that are repeated until they are ritual, a kind of affirmation, a declaration in action that you are here and you are present and you intend to remain so for as long as the engagement requires. The way the squad eats together when it is possible, not in the formal mess arrangements of the fortress monastery, but in the field, in the brief intervals between phases of an engagement when the rations come out and you are simply present together without the structure of a mission to organize the time. The conversations in those intervals are not what an outside observer would expect from beings of your nature and history. They are not tactical debriefs or doctrinal discussions or the kind of elevated discourse about duty and honor that the chapter's formal culture valorizes. They are ordinary, small observations about the specific character of the world you are currently on, the particular quality of its light or its soil, or the behavior of its native species in proximity to the camp. Memories that surface for reasons that are often not clear even to the person sharing them. A specific quality of humor that developed in your particular squad over your particular shared history, and that depends on references and shorthand that no one outside the squad would fully understand. Kellyan had a way of describing impossible situations that made them sound bureaucratically inconvenient rather than lethal, a specific dry register that he applied to the most extreme circumstances with a consistency that became, over the engagements, one of the things you looked forward to in the worst moments. The certain knowledge that when things were most dire, Kellyan would find the phrase that reduced the enormity to something almost manageable by the act of naming it in the most understated possible terms. You miss this. It has been 14 years since Kellyan died, and you still miss it with a specificity that 14 years has not reduced, the absence of that particular register, still noticeable in the worst moments, the way the absence of a familiar sound is noticeable. The silence where the thing used to be more present than whatever has replaced it. Brother Avarice has developed, in the years since he was the youngest and most earnest member of the squad, into something that the training program would describe as a fine specimen of the Astartes type, and that you would describe to yourself as a version of yourself from 30 years ago who kept most of what was good about that and lost only what needed to be lost. He has acquired the specific competence that comes from a decade of real deployment, and he has acquired it without losing the quality of genuine engagement that you noticed in him from the beginning, the quality of someone who is actually here and actually present in what they are doing rather than simply executing. This is rarer than it sounds. You have fought alongside Space Marines for whom the work has become sufficiently routinized that the genuine presence has been replaced by a very high-quality performance of presence, a distinction that is invisible to anyone who does not know what the original looked like and that you can see in Avarice because you can see what it is not. The squad has changed around the two of you, filled in with new brothers as the old ones were lost. The new brothers becoming part of the specific fabric of the squad's identity in the way that new elements become part of any living structure, altering it while being altered by it. The squad that exists now containing the history of all its previous configurations without being defined only by any of them. You know the new brothers. You trust them. The trust was established in the specific way that Space Marine trust is established, through shared extremity, through the evidence of how they performed in the moments that counted. But there is a depth to the trust you have with Avarice that the newer brothers have not yet accumulated, and that you do not expect them to accumulate for years still. The specific depth that only time and shared history and the mutual knowledge of each other's specific qualities under specific kinds of pressure can produce. This is the other thing about time. It does not only accumulate loss, it also accumulates the depth of the things that survive the losses, makes them richer and more specific and more genuinely yours. The way that anything you have carried for a long time becomes more completely part of what you are than something recently acquired. The Primarchs are the organizing fact of everything you are. Not just your gene seed, not just the specific biological template that your chapter derives from whichever of the 20 original gene fathers it descends from, but the deeper structural fact that you exist within a tradition designed by beings of incomprehensible capability, and that has been running for 10,000 years on the momentum of their designs. The Primarchs made the Space Marines possible. The Primarchs also, half of them, tried to destroy everything the Space Marines were created to protect. And the aftermath of that attempt is the context in which you operate every single day. Your chapter descends from one of the surviving loyalist Primarchs, and the specific legacy of that gene father is present in everything about your chapter's culture, in the way it fights and the way it prays and the specific emphases of its values. If you are a son of Guilliman, you carry the legacy of the most organized and administratively capable of the Primarchs, the one who wrote the Codex and who restructured the Imperium after the Heresy, and who returned 10,000 years later to find his creation both impressive and deeply disappointing in equal measure. If you are a son of Dawn, you carry the legacy of the most stubbornly loyal, the one who built the defenses of terror that held during the siege, the one whose iron cage became a monument to endurance past the point of any rational assessment of what endurance was possible. If you are a son of Vulcan, you carry the legacy of the most merciful, the one whose teachings insisted on the value of human life in ways that the other Primarchs found inconvenient and that cost his legion in tactical efficiency and gained them something harder to measure. If you are a son of the Lion, you carry the secret. Each Primarch was a different answer to the question of what the perfect warrior leader of humanity should be. And each of those answers was also a different kind of flaw, a different specific failure mode that the qualities which made each Primarch extraordinary also made inevitable. Horus was the greatest of all of them, and his greatness was the specific kind that makes betrayal maximally catastrophic when it comes. Magnus was the most gifted psychically, and his gift led him to the specific transgression that gave the Chaos Gods their opening to destroy his legion. Russ was the most ferocious, and his ferocity led him to the specific act against Magnus that started the chain of events the Thousand Suns' fall ran through. Perturabo was the most technically brilliant, and his brilliance was housed in a psychology that accumulated grievances with a thoroughness that made his fall almost inevitable. Lorgar was the most devoted, and his devotion proved catastrophically misdirectable when the object of that devotion was questioned. You know the histories. You have read them in the librarium, the versions the chapter makes available, which are complete enough to convey the shape of what happened. You know about the Council of Nicaea, where the Emperor restricted psychic abilities across the legions, a technically correct decision that contributed to catastrophic downstream consequences. You know about the drop site massacre at Istvan Fi, where the loyalist legions walked into a trap set by brothers who had been preparing that trap while appearing to prepare something else. You know about the Siege of Terra, the months of assault on the walls of the Imperial Palace, the scale of it so vast that individual battles within it that would each qualify as significant wars were merely tactical details of the overall engagement. The Primarchs who are still present are few. Guilliman returned through events the Inquisition documents with notable incompleteness. The Lion sleeping in the rock of the Dark Angels Fortress Monastery. The missing ones whose fates remain unresolved, who exist in the chapter traditions as the subjects of prophecy and the specific kind of hope that attaches to things that are neither confirmed nor denied, that can be neither mourned as gone nor celebrated as returned. You think about the Primarchs sometimes, in the quiet hours, what it would mean to stand in the presence of one. The accounts in the librarium consistently fail to convey the experience because there are no words adequate to standing in the presence of something that far beyond you on the exact scale you are beyond an ordinary human being. You were not alive during the Horus Heresy. This is objectively true. The Horus Heresy happened 10,000 years ago, and you are at most a few centuries old and probably considerably younger. But the Horus Heresy happened to you because the entire structure of the Adeptus Astartes as it currently exists, the chapter system, the Codex Astartes, the bifurcation of the 20 original legions into the hundreds of chapters that now serve the Imperium, all of it is a direct response to what Horus did and what it revealed about what the legions could become. The Horus Heresy was the greatest betrayal in human history. Horus Lupercal, the first and greatest of the Emperor's sons, the Primarch who had been given command of all the other Primarchs and their legions and designated the War Master, the Emperor's right hand in the Great Crusade, turned against the Emperor with half the legions at his back and nearly destroyed everything. The Word-bearers who introduced him to the Chaos Gods, the Alpha Legion whose loyalty was always ambiguous and remained so, the Thousand Suns who were scattered by the Space Wolves and turned in rage and despair, the Death Guard who followed Mortarion into Nurgle's embrace, the Emperor's children who followed Fulgrim down the road that Slanesh was always walking toward them, the Iron Warriors and the Night Lords and the World Eaters, each falling in their own way, each betrayal a story that is also a warning. 10,000 years later, the traitor legions are still in the Eye of Terror, still fighting, still trying to do what Horus almost did. They are changed beyond what they were, shaped by 10 millennia of existence in the warp into things that are harder to describe as simply Space Marines who chose the wrong side. They are the Chaos Space Marines, the corrupted, the fallen, and they are your problem in the sense that they are everyone's problem, the ongoing consequence of a decision made 10,000 years ago that the Imperium has never been able to fully resolve. The Codex Astartes exists because of them. Gilliman wrote it in the aftermath of the heresy, in the scouring that followed Horus's death, with the specific goal of ensuring that no single military force in the Imperium would ever again have enough power to do what Horus did. The legions were broken into chapters. No chapter was permitted to exceed 1,000 battle brothers. The gene seed of each chapter was monitored for deviation from the original template. The autonomy that had allowed individual Primarchs to develop the specific and sometimes dangerous cultures of their legions was structured and constrained and documented in 200 volumes of tactical doctrine and organizational procedure and guidelines for the maintenance of the chapter's purity. You follow the Codex. Your chapter follows the Codex because it was written by a Primarch, and because the alternative, which is the exercise of independent judgment at the chapter level about when and how to deviate from doctrine, is the alternative that led to the Badab War and the Astral Clause, and a dozen other cautionary tales about Space Marine chapters that decided their own interpretation of the mission superseded the institutional framework. The Codex Astartes is not simply a tactical manual. It is an engineering solution to the problem of what happens when beings of extraordinary power are given extraordinary autonomy, and the solution it implements is constraint, documentation, oversight, and the specific institutional culture that values compliance with the framework over individual excellence that the framework cannot accommodate. This means that there are situations in your career where the tactically correct decision is clear and the doctrinally correct decision is different, and you take the doctrinally correct decision because the doctrine is not simply a recommendation. You are not always wrong to do this. The doctrine was written by people who understood more about the long game than you do from your current position, who had access to information and perspective that you cannot have from inside a single engagement on a single world, who built the framework with full knowledge of what happens when individual Space Marines decide that their judgment supersedes it. But there are moments when following the doctrine costs you something that it should not have cost, and you carry those moments on the list with everything else, and they are heavy in a different way from the other things on the list, a heavier specific gravity because they involve a choice you made that you cannot entirely defend. You have fought orcs. The first time you fought orcs was a profoundly disorienting experience, not because of their violence, which you were prepared for, but because of their affect. The orcs approach warfare with what can only be described as enthusiasm, a genuine and apparently sincere joy in the experience of combat that is completely unlike any human relationship with violence, and that creates, in the Space Marines engaging them, a strange cognitive dissonance between the tactical reality of beings who are trying very hard to kill you and the emotional reality of beings who seem to be having an excellent time doing it. The orcs are a species that was genetically engineered by a now extinct alien civilization called the Old Ones to serve as weapons in a war that ended before humanity developed language, and they are in many respects still exactly that. Beings whose entire biology and psychology has been optimized for warfare to the exclusion of almost everything else. They eat what they can find and kill what they encounter, and breed with the efficiency of fungi in a humid environment, and get bigger when they fight more and laugh when they are injured in ways that would be fatal to any other species. Their technology should not work by any conventional assessment of its components, and the leading theory among the Adeptus Mechanicus, which they find deeply uncomfortable and do not advertise, is that it functions because the collective psychic field of the orc species makes it work, that billions of orcs believing their ramshackle weapons will fire is enough psychic energy to actually make them fire with some regularity. You have fought Eldar. Fighting the Eldar is fighting beings who have been at war for millions of years longer than humanity has existed, and whose bodies and reflexes and psychic abilities reflect that history in every movement. Beings who are faster than you and more perceptive than you, and who have foreseen the outcome of the engagement 3 times before it began. The Eldar who fight you are aspect warriors, warriors who have surrendered their entire identity to a specific aspect of war and who practice that aspect with the complete devotion of beings who have removed from their consciousness everything that is not the practice. The striking scorpions who come at you through the shadows. The howling banshees whose sonic weapons override your pain responses and strip your concentration in the moment you need it most. The Dark Reapers, who stand at range and deliver death with the precision of artists who have made peace with what they are making. The Eldar as a species are dying. They have been dying since the birth of Slaanesh, since the moment 10,000 years ago when the accumulated psychic excess of their civilization crescendoed into the creation of a chaos god whose birth consumed most of their species in a single instant. What remains of them is magnificent and tragic, and utterly without the comfort of thinking there is an exit from what they are in, because there is not. Slaanesh waits for every Eldar soul, waits with the patience of something that knows the end of the story, and the Eldar fight their wars and maintain their craft worlds and operate their infinity circuits, and everything they do is ultimately the prolonged refusal to acknowledge an ending that they know is waiting. The Imperial Guard is the primary fighting force of the Imperium of Man, and it operates on scales that make the Adeptus Astartes look like a special operations unit inserted into a conventional war, which is essentially what you are. The Guard musters its forces in the millions and the hundreds of millions, entire worlds' worth of soldiers drawn together under the direction of Lord Commanders, whose operational areas dwarf anything a chapter master manages, fighting wars that grind across decades and centuries against enemies that the Guard's numbers and the Imperium's industrial capacity are eventually able to exhaust. Working alongside the Guard is an education in several things simultaneously. It is an education in what ordinary human beings are capable of when the context removes all alternatives, because the standard Imperial Guardsman is not enhanced, not genetically modified, not the product of the extraordinary process that produced you. They are simply people, equipped with laser guns and flak armor that would not stop a bolter round, organized into units that advance across open ground into weapons fire that kills them in statistically predictable quantities. And they do this because the Imperium requires it, and because the alternative is having the thing that the Imperium is defending against arrive at whatever they are personally defending, and because after enough time in a unit, the bonds between soldiers create their own reasons that are separate from the larger justifications. You find yourself doing things when working alongside the Guard that you do not do in chapter operations, things that your training did not cover because your training assumed a context of peer capability that the Guard's presence removes. You place yourself between the Guard's line and the threat that is pressing on it, not because your orders specify this, but because the calculus is clear, and the calculus is that you can absorb what the line cannot, and the line must be preserved, because the Guard behind you is the force that will hold the ground after you have cleared it. You make yourself visible in situations where your chapter's doctrine would have you concealed because the Guard's morale responds to the presence of a space marine in ways that are tactically significant. The sight of you in your armor advancing toward the enemy, doing something to the soldiers behind you that their sergeant's words cannot accomplish in the same way. You feel, working alongside the Guard, a specific quality of regard from the ordinary soldiers that you have no exact equivalent for in your experience. They look at you with something that is simultaneously awe and the particular unease of people in the presence of something that does not quite fit their category system. Something that is human in origin and human in many of its qualities, and also emphatically not human in the ways that matter most to a soldier standing next to it under fire. The Guard officers who work alongside Astartes units for extended operations develop a kind of comfortable working relationship with this regard, learning to interface with Space Marines as a professional matter without resolving the underlying category confusion. The ordinary soldiers tend not to resolve it either, tending instead to settle into a practical acceptance that is part of the same cognitive flexibility that allows them to function in a universe containing chaos gods and tyrannid hive minds and all the other things that their cosmology was not designed to accommodate. You care about them. This is perhaps the most surprising thing, the thing that the chapter's culture of separation from ordinary humanity and the training's emphasis on the distinction between Astartes and the humans they serve does not quite prepare you for, the specific quality of feeling that develops when you have fought alongside the same regiment across multiple engagements, when you know their capabilities and their limitations, and the specific ways that particular soldiers respond to particular kinds of pressure. You care about them in a way that is not the easy affection of people who are equal because you are not equal, but in the way that is specific to the responsibility of protecting something that cannot protect itself to the same degree you can protect it, the way you care about something that is genuinely fragile and that you have chosen to stand between and the things that would destroy it. When they die, as they die, in the statistical quantities that Guard operations generate, you feel it differently from how you feel the loss of your squad brothers. The loss of a brother is the loss of something that was supposed to be durable, that the entire project of the Astartes was designed to make durable, and the failure of that design is a specific kind of loss. The loss of a guardsman is the loss of something that was never supposed to be durable in the same way, that you knew was fragile when you first stood next to them, that you could see in their faces the mortality that your armor and your genetics and your training are designed to defer, and that theirs do nothing to defer. It is the loss of something that was always going to be lost. This does not make it easier, it makes it different. The commissars who maintain discipline in Guard regiments occupy a position that you find philosophically interesting in the specific way that power maintained through summary execution is always philosophically interesting, which is to say complicated in ways that the formal doctrinal position on commissarial authority does not address. A commissar who shoots a guardsman retreating in the face of overwhelming odds is performing a function that the doctrine specifies and that the mathematics of large-scale military operations validates: the exemplary death of one soldier to prevent the contagious spread of retreat through a unit of thousands. You understand this. You also understand that the soldier who was shot was a person, and that the commissar who shot them is a person, and that the doctrine that specifies this outcome was written by people and can be questioned in the way that anything written by people can be questioned, even if the questioning is impractical in the middle of an engagement, and even if the chaplains would have opinions about doing it aloud. You have fought the forces of Nurgle on a world called Vethis Prime, and the experience of it is unlike fighting any other enemy, because the world itself, by the time the chapter arrived, had been sufficiently corrupted that the distinction between the enemy and the environment was no longer clear. The air carried the gifts of the plague god in concentrations that would have killed unprotected mortals within minutes, and the terrain between the drop zone and the primary objective was a landscape that had been transformed by Nurgle's touch from whatever it had been before into something that was alive in ways that terrain should not be alive, the ground soft and yielding underfoot in ways that suggested organic process rather than geological substrate, the occasional structure still standing from the world's pre-corruption era, now host to growths and blooms of things that had no names in the Imperium's botanical records. The cultists of Nurgle are perhaps the most philosophically challenging enemy to fight because they are not afraid, not in the way that even the most fanatical of ordinary human enemies are afraid, not in the way that the fear is simply suppressed beneath the ideology and will emerge if the suppression fails. Nurgle's gifts include the removal of fear at its source, the restructuring of the follower's relationship with death and suffering in ways that make those things lose their power to motivate avoidance. They come at you because they want to come at you, because spreading their God's blessings to those who have not yet received them is an act of genuine devotion that they experience as love. And there is something in the specific quality of that advance, the cheerful purposefulness of it, the absence of the desperation that characterizes most enemies fighting to the death, that requires a specific adjustment of your own psychology to engage with effectively. You have fought the Thousand Suns rubric Marines, and fighting them is fighting ghosts in armor, the sorcery of Magnus the Red's Legion, and the curse of the rubric that Ahriman worked on his battle brothers 10,000 years ago, combined to produce warriors who are not, in the technical biological sense, alive. The armor of a rubric Marine contains no living soldier, only the dust of the warrior who was, the mortal remains of a Thousand Suns legionnaire, compressed into powder and animated by the bound soul within, sustained by the sorcery of their sorcerer commanders, and directed by whatever remains of their personality and will in the form it has taken after 10,000 years in this state. They fight with the precision of something that does not feel pain, does not tire, does not know despair, and they fight with weapons that strike at the mind as much as the body, the psychic resonance of their bolter fire, carrying a quality that your own librarians describe as soul resonant, a frequency that interacts with the psychic field of the target in ways that bolter rounds fired by ordinary space marines do not. You have fought alongside warriors of other chapters in the great engagements where multiple chapters are committed to a single theater of war, and the experience of fighting alongside your cousins is simultaneously familiar and strange. The shared foundation of the Astartes genome and training and culture producing warriors who feel immediately comprehensible in ways that non-Astartes allies do not, but whose chapter-specific culture and doctrine produce approaches and emphases and judgments that differ from yours in ways that require negotiation. The Blood Angels fight with a ferocity that is beautiful and alarming in equal measure, the genetic legacy of Sanguinius driving them toward a kind of martial poetry that the Ultramarines would describe as tactically suboptimal, and that produces results in combat that tactical optimality does not predict. The Space Wolves fight as a pack in ways that the Codex Astartes does not entirely sanction, and that work with a consistency that the Codex adherents find difficult to incorporate into their doctrinal frameworks. The Dark Angels carry with them a quality of divided attention, as though part of their operational bandwidth is always occupied by something internal that they are not sharing with their allies, which in fact it is, the eternal pursuit of the fallen, consuming resources that other chapters direct entirely outward. You have fought in the void, in boarding actions aboard ships whose corridors become the battlefield and whose pressurized compartments become the objectives. Void combat is different from planetary combat in every practical respect. The three-dimensional engagement space and the catastrophic consequences of hull breaching and the specific risks of depressurization and fire in an enclosed environment where the air you breathe is the most valuable tactical resource present. You have crossed the void between ships in a boarding torpedo, moving at velocities that make the impact of arrival feel like a controlled collision, because it is. The armored prow of the torpedo punching through a hull that was never designed to absorb that kind of force, and then the ramp drops and you are inside an enemy ship that is now in the process of trying to kill you with everything it has available in the very narrow confines of its internal corridors. You have fought the Tyranids and the experience of fighting. Tyranids is the experience of fighting mathematics made flesh, the specific horror of an enemy that does not have tactics in the sense that the word implies individual decisions and adaptations, but rather has something older and more fundamental, the optimization of biological systems for specific tactical challenges over evolutionary timescales, compressed by the hive mind's direct guidance of the evolutionary process. The gaunts that swarm in front of you are not soldiers. They are ammunition. They are the expendable bodies thrown forward to deplete your resources and reveal your positions and fix your attention, while the larger organisms that coordinate the swarm's movement assess your capabilities and adapt the follow-on wave accordingly. The hive mind behind them has been consuming worlds for millions of years, and it has encountered every kind of opposition, and it has learned from every encounter and adapted and improved. And the fact that you personally have encountered it and survived this encounter means absolutely nothing about the next encounter, because the hive mind that faces you next will already know what the hive mind that faced you before learned. The Necrons are perhaps the most conceptually disturbing enemy you will face, not because of their capabilities, which are formidable, but because of their nature. 60 million years ago, they were a living species, flesh and blood and culture, a civilization that fought a war against the old ones that reshaped the galaxy. They lost that war, or won it, in a way that required them to pay a price that makes victory and defeat indistinguishable by transferring their consciousnesses into immortal metal bodies and then sleeping in their tomb worlds for 60 million years while the galaxy changed around them. They wake now in this age, emerging from the stone to find that everything they knew is gone, that the civilizations they were at war with have risen and fallen and risen and fallen, and that the galaxy they are returning to is not the galaxy they slept in, that humanity and its Imperium and all the other species are newcomers to a place that was already ancient when the Necrons were young. A Necron warrior that you destroy does not stay destroyed. Not unless you destroy it completely enough that the self-repair systems have nothing to work with, and the threshold of complete enough is significantly higher than for any biological enemy. You can fire at a Necron until it falls and watch it begin to reassemble itself while you fire at the next one, the metallic body knitting itself back together with a patience that is the patience of something that has been alive for 60 million years and has no concept of urgency. The Chaos Space Marines are the most psychologically complex enemy you will face because they are you, or they were you, or they were the same thing you were before they became what they are now. They wear the same armor, or corrupted versions of it. They carry the same weapons, or corrupted versions of them. They have the same training, or had it 10,000 years ago before 10,000 years in the Eye of Terror added things to it that the training manuals do not cover. When you face a Chaos Space Marine across the battlefield, you are facing a mirror that has been held up to a fire for 10,000 years and shows you something that could have been you if the specific accidents of history had been different. The chaplains are among the most important figures in a Space Marine chapter, which is a statement that sounds straightforwardly obvious until you think about what it means. Their formal role is spiritual guidance, the maintenance of the chapter's religious and ideological framework, the performance of the rituals that mark the rhythms of a Space Marine's life. Their actual role is the management of the psychological architecture that keeps the chapter functional, the ongoing maintenance of the belief structures that allow its members to do what they do and keep doing it. Your chapter's senior chaplain is a figure of accumulated authority that makes the air in a room change when he enters it. He has been the chapter's chaplain for longer than most of its current members have been alive. He has presided over more funerals than he has counted. He has delivered the pre-battle address before engagements that the records classify at levels above general access, and he discusses their outcomes with a careful absence of specificity that tells you more about what happened than a direct account would. The pre-battle address is a ritual that combines the functions of military briefing and religious service and psychological preparation in ways that blend their purposes so thoroughly that separating them would diminish all three. The chaplain stands before the assembled company in his black armor, the skull-faced helm giving the address the specific visual quality of something being delivered from beyond ordinary human experience, and he speaks with a force that is part skill and part genuine belief. The most effective chaplains are not performing conviction, but expressing it, the words carrying the weight of an actual faith that has been tested in the exact circumstances it is being used to prepare you for. The belief coexists in many Space Marines who have been serving long enough, with a clear-eyed awareness of the Imperium's failures and the chapter's failures and the specific gap between what the Imperium claims to be and what it demonstrably is. This coexistence is not hypocrisy. It is the specific cognitive state of beings who have learned that systems can be broken and worth preserving simultaneously, that the imperfection of a thing does not negate its necessity, that the difference between the Imperium as it should be and the Imperium as it is does not change the fact that destroying it would produce something worse. The chaplains know who is struggling with this balance. They know because of the confessional-like private conversations that are part of their pastoral function, the one-on-one exchanges in which Space Marines say things they cannot say anywhere else. The chaplains know who in the chapter is at risk, and they intervene in ways that are sometimes gentle and sometimes not, and the interventions that are not gentle are not cruel. They are simply the interventions of people who have a very clear understanding of what the alternative to intervention looks like, because they have seen it in the Chaos Space Marines who turned, and in the Renegade chapters, and in the individual Marines who broke in ways that required the chapter to address them. You believe what the chaplain tells you, or you tell yourself you believe it, which is not quite the same thing, and the management of the gap between those two states is one of the ongoing projects of your inner life. The belief is not always simple, but it is real at the center of it, a genuine devotion to something larger than yourself that makes the rest of it possible. The Chaos Gods are always trying to erode this. The chaplains are always working to maintain it. You are somewhere in the middle, doing the work. The Horus Heresy happened 10,000 years ago. This is a fact that is difficult to fully integrate into your understanding of your own situation, because 10,000 years is a span of time that sits outside ordinary human cognition, even for a genetically enhanced post-human with a modified brain. The Marines Eternal in your chapter, the brothers who have been serving long enough that their experience predates living memory, who were alive when the events that are now mythology were news, who in some cases have personal memories of things that the chapter's records classify as ancient history. These warriors carry a weight that does not have a name in any language the Imperium uses. You are not that old yet, but you can see the direction. In the veteran Marines whose careers span centuries, in the way that long service changes the quality of presence, the specific quality of someone who has processed enough experience that the surface of their attention has become very still, very patient, very hard to disturb. You are moving in that direction. The years of service are accumulating. The experiences are accumulating. The list of things you carry is getting longer. Your face changes over time in ways that your armor conceals, but that your squad brothers can see in the moments when the helm is removed. The lines that develop around your eyes are not the lines of ordinary aging, but of sustained attention, the expression of someone who has been in the habit of watching very carefully for a very long time. Your hands carry scars that even the Laraman's organ could not entirely prevent. These are not badges of honor in any way you would describe as vanity. They are simply evidence of a life. You have killed a great many things. This is not a number you maintain consciously. It is simply a fact about the history you have accumulated. The chaplains would tell you that each enemy fallen is a service to the God Emperor and the Imperium, that the violence you have committed is sanctified by the purpose it serves. You do not have a simple relationship with this framing. You have a relationship with it that has been shaped by everything you have seen, and the relationship is real and functional and sustains you, and it is also complicated in ways that you do not express aloud. The concept of home becomes something you carry internally after long enough, because the external reference for it have changed so many times over the years that the home you have now is not a place but a state, the chapter's fortress monastery that has been your base of operations for decades or centuries, the specific combination of stone corridors and the smell of sacred oils and the sound of the armory at work that your body has learned to recognize as the environment from which you deploy and to which you return. It is not the hab on the 47th level of the hive or the longhouse on the feudal world or wherever you came from. It is what replaced that, what was built in its place over years of service until the replacement became real in its own right. You miss things that you did not expect to miss, not the dramatic losses, those are expected. and you were prepared for them in the way the training prepared you. The small ones, the particular quality of light on a specific world that you served on for 3 months 12 years ago that you find yourself thinking about in the waiting period before a deployment with a specificity that surprises you. The sound that Kellyan made when something struck him as genuinely funny before Kellyan died in the 73rd engagement. A sound that you have not heard since and that you realize you cannot fully reconstruct from memory anymore. The specific quality of it fading. The weight of the old bolter that was replaced after the Styges campaign with an identical model that functioned exactly the same and felt completely different. These are the accumulations of a long life. These are the things that do not fit on any list the chapter maintains, in any record the administratum keeps, in any document the Inquisition would access in its assessments of chapter integrity. These are simply yours, the private archaeology of a consciousness that has been experiencing things for a very long time and retains more of what it has experienced than it expected to. There is a specific quality that very old Space Marines have that is different from simply being experienced. Experience accumulates and produces expertise and perspective, and the specific calibration of judgment that comes from having seen a great many outcomes to a great many situations. What happens over centuries is something additional, something that expertise alone does not produce, a quality of settled weight that sits in the presence of a long-serving Astartes, the way mass sits in a large gravitational body, bending the space around it slightly without any active effort. You notice this quality in the senior veterans of your chapter, and you have been noticing it for long enough now that you have begun to notice it in yourself. The gradual development of a patience that is not the patience of someone waiting for something, but the patience of someone who has learned at the cellular level that most things resolve in their own time, and that the urgency applied to them in the moment of their apparent crisis is almost always in excess of what the situation actually warrants. This patience is useful. It is also sometimes a source of friction with the newer battle brothers who have not yet learned it and who experience the absence of urgency in their seniors as something between wisdom and troubling detachment. The dreams change over the centuries. Not the content exactly, though that changes too, but the quality of them, the relationship between the dreaming mind and the material it processes. In the early years of your service, the dreams were vivid and direct and obviously related to the events they were processing. The straightforward psychological maintenance of a consciousness that was encountering things beyond its prior experience and needed the night hours to integrate them. Over time, the dreams became less literal and more associative, processing the same events through increasingly complex networks of connection and symbol that your waking mind could not always follow. The catalepsean nodes modified sleep, producing in you a kind of dreaming that was both less complete and more architecturally complex than ordinary human sleep. And then there is the thing that happens to your relationship with time itself, which is perhaps the most fundamental change that long service produces and the one that is hardest to describe to someone who has not yet experienced it. Time, for an ordinary human being, is experienced as a continuous medium in which the present is always here and the past is always there, behind, receding at a consistent rate. For a Space Marine who has been serving long enough, the past does not recede in quite the same way. The engagements of 30 years ago are not as distant as 30 years should make them feel. The brothers who died in the campaigns of a century past are not as gone as a century should make them. The past accumulates around you not as memory, which fades, but as presence, the continued psychic weight of what has been experienced pressing forward into the present with a persistence that the decades do not erode. This is why the Dreadnoughts speak slowly, not because their chassis limits them, but because a consciousness that is carrying 10,000 years of presence, even with the gaps of stasis sleep, has learned a pace appropriate to the density of what it contains. You are not yet at that pace, but you can feel the direction of travel, the way your own present is growing more crowded with the accumulated weight of your past, and you can project forward in the way that a Space Marine's enhanced analytical capability permits to what that accumulation looks like at the end of a career of extraordinary length. What you project forward to is not despair. This is important. You have seen despair in Space Marines, and it is not this, not the weight of centuries, which is heavy but not crushing. The despair you have seen comes from a different source, from the specific failure of meaning that occurs when a Space Marine has been at this long enough to have lost the belief that the weight is being carried in the service of something that justifies it. The weight without the meaning beneath it is crushing. The weight with the meaning is simply heavy, and you have been carrying heavy things since the day you were 13 years old and the recruiter arrived and everything changed. You carry the names. This is perhaps the most private of your practices, the one most removed from the chapter's formal culture of mourning and remembrance, the one that is entirely yours, not prescribed by any litany or endorsed by any chaplain, but simply developed over years as the necessary response to the specific accumulation of loss that a career like yours produces. You carry the names of your dead brothers, not just the ones inscribed in the chapter's formal records, but the ones that exist only in you now, the ones who died in engagements that the records classify at levels that reduce them to operational notations, the ones whose specific quality of presence you remember in ways that the records do not capture and that will cease to exist when you cease to exist. You carry them quietly, without ceremony, in the private architecture of a consciousness that has made space for them the way a large room makes space for furniture, incorporating them into the structure of what you are without being defined only by their presence. The question of what you are for returns periodically over the long years of service, not as a crisis but as a recurrence, the way a load-bearing concern returns to a consciousness that has not resolved it, has only tabled it for the current operational period. What are you for? Not in the formal sense. The formal answer is clear and has been clear since the day you were selected. You are for the protection of humanity and the service of the Emperor and the maintenance of the Imperium against its innumerable enemies. But in the deeper sense, the sense that the formal answer does not reach, the sense in which the question is being asked when the mission is complete and the armor is temporarily set aside and there is nothing required of you for the next several hours. What are you for then? What are you when the purpose is momentarily suspended? You have developed an answer over the years. It is not the answer the chaplains would give, not the theological resolution they would offer, not the reference to service and devotion and the eternal purpose of the God Emperor's warriors. It is simpler than that and harder to articulate and more genuinely yours, which is to say, it is the answer that has emerged from the specific life you have actually lived rather than the one prescribed by the institution that shaped you. You are for this, for the accumulated specific weight of everything you have described, the brothers you served beside, and the enemies you fought, and the worlds you protected, and the guardsmen you stood between, and the darkness and the long, slow accumulation of centuries of holding the line. Not for some abstracted purpose beyond it, for the thing itself, the actual practice of it, the daily specific work of being what you are in the world that you are in. This is not a small thing to be for. It is, in the final accounting, perhaps the largest thing there is to be for. The galaxy is vast in ways that even the Imperium's maps, which cover more of it than any other civilization's cartography, cannot fully convey. The Astronomican's light reaches approximately 50,000 light-years from Terra in optimal conditions, which sounds comprehensive until you understand that the galaxy is approximately 100,000 light-years in diameter, which means the Astronomican illuminates roughly a quarter of it, and the 3/4 beyond its reach are navigated by methods that are less reliable and produce outcomes that are correspondingly more varied. Beyond the Astronomican's light, the Imperium's presence becomes thinner, outposts and expeditionary forces operating in a darkness that is not simply spatial, but navigational, the absence of the beacon making every warp transit a more uncertain proposition. Beyond those outposts, beyond the furthest reach of any Imperial presence, the galaxy continues. Other civilizations, other species, other histories that the Imperium has not encountered or has encountered only briefly and filed under categories that do not capture what they actually are. The galaxy that the Imperium describes in its records and its cartography is the galaxy as the Imperium knows it, which is a significant and hard-won body of knowledge and also a fraction of what is there. You understand this. You have stood on the edges of what the Imperium knows and looked outward into what it does not. And the experience of that looking is not the comfortable mystery of something that might be anything but the specific and experienced conviction that whatever is out there is not mostly benign. The warp underlies all of it. Every star system, every void, every inhabited or uninhabited world, every point in real space has its corresponding location in the immaterium, the psychic dimension that your soul and the souls of every sentient being in the galaxy contribute to simply by existing, the sea of consciousness that the Chaos Gods emerged from, and that the Astronomicon burns within, and that the navigators read like the surface of an ocean they can feel but not quite see. The warp is the other side of everything. The galaxy by night, if you could see both the material universe and the immaterium simultaneously, would look completely different from the galaxy as the charts record it. The shapes of warp storms and calm passages and the great currents of psychic energy overlaid on the stars in a map that no instrument can fully capture and that navigators and psychers can only partially perceive. You have been in the warp. The drop pod and the battle barge and the strike cruiser have all crossed between real space and the immaterium in your presence, and you have felt the crossing each time, the specific quality of the Geller field going up and the translation happening and the outside of the ship becoming something that your armor's instruments can detect the presence of but cannot render in any format that your eyes can make sense of. The warp outside the Geller field during transit is not visible in the ordinary sense. It is perceptible to psychers and to space marines whose training has attuned them to certain kinds of awareness, as a quality of the air inside the ship, a density, a wrongness that is not quite sound and not quite sensation but partakes of both. You have learned over the years to read the quality of that wrongness as an indicator of conditions in the warp through which you are transiting, the way a sailor reads the quality of the wind and the water to assess the conditions of the voyage. And you have stood on worlds that sit close to the Eye of Terror, the great wound in reality that marks where the warp pours permanently into real space across a region of space that was once inhabited and industrialized and populated before the fall of the Eldar tore the barrier between dimensions, and the eye opened and the region was lost. Standing on a world near the eye, you can feel it, not with your physical senses, which your armor mediates and which the warp in any case does not directly stimulate in the way that ordinary physical phenomena stimulate them. With the other thing, the awareness that you developed in training and that the centuries of service have refined past what the Scholastica Psychana program that trains ordinary psychers would recognize as an Astartes capability, the specific attunement to the psychic environment that fighting near the warp's most extreme manifestations tends to produce in warriors who survive that fighting long enough to be changed by it. What you feel standing on those worlds is age. The Eye of Terror is old. The Chaos Gods within it are old. The traitor legions that have been there for 10,000 years are old in a way that is different from the ordinary way that age accumulates on things. Old in the way of things that have been held in the warp's stasis, preserved and distorted and made into something that time has processed differently than it processes things in real space. 10,000 years in the Eye of Terror is not 10,000 years as you experience it. It is something else, something that the traitor legions carry in the quality of their presence on the battlefield when they emerge, a weight and a wrongness and an antiquity that precedes the oldest thing in the Imperium's institutional memory. The Chaos Gods themselves are older than the Eye, older than humanity, older than the galaxy's current configuration in the sense that the psychic energies that coalesced into their forms have been accumulating since the first sentient species in the galaxy began to dream and fear and want and suffer. Khorne's rage is as old as the first act of violence between beings complex enough to feel the violence as an emotional event. Nurgle's gifts extend back to the first organisms that decomposed and the first sentient creatures that feared decomposition. Slaanesh is the newest of the four, born from the fall of the Eldar, which makes them young in terms of the others and still older than human civilization by a margin that makes the comparison meaningless. You are fighting things that are billions of years old. Your bolter rounds, those miniature self-propelled missiles of extraordinary engineering, are fired by a being who has lived perhaps a few centuries against enemies that have existed since before the galaxy took its current shape. The asymmetry of this is not something that the chapter's doctrinal tradition encourages you to dwell on, and for good reason, because dwelling on it produces a quality of existential unease that does not serve operational effectiveness. But you know it. You carry it on the list with everything else. The list is very long now. The dreadnoughts of your chapter are the ancestors made present, the warriors who died and were preserved and who continue in a form that is no longer quite what they were, to serve. You have spoken with one. You have stood in the shadow of a chassis that was ancient before the current age of the Imperium began and looked at the sarcophagus at its center, that armored container of what remains of someone who was once what you are, and tried to find words for what the conversation was like and found none that were adequate. The Dreadnought called himself by a name you will not reproduce here because it felt like the kind of thing that should remain private, the name of a person rather than of a weapon system, a distinction that the chapter's formal records do not maintain, but that the Dreadnought himself maintained with a consistency that told you the distinction mattered to him in ways that the decades or centuries of sleep between his awakenings had not eroded. He spoke slowly. Not because the chassis limited his communication speed, but because the pace of his speech was the pace of someone for whom urgency had become a concept belonging to other people, someone for whom the next 5 minutes had been dwarfed by everything that came before, to the point where 5 minutes was simply not a meaningful unit of time anymore. He told you things about the early years of the current age of the Imperium that the Librarium's records confirm are accurate, and that the Librarium's records also fail to convey in any way that approximates the weight that the Dreadnought gave them. He had been there, not near it, not in the same sector, but there, present at events that had become mythology in the 10,000 years since, present in the way of someone who experienced history as something that was simply happening around him rather than as something that was being made. The events that the texts describe as pivotal and significant were, from the inside of them, he said, mostly chaotic and terrifying and poorly understood by the people within them, the significance only apparent afterward, only visible from the outside of the moment, only legible when the story had acquired enough distance to be read as a story, rather than lived as a sequence of immediate crises. He asked you how the chapter was doing. Not the chapter's combat record or operational status, the information that the command staff would have briefed him on when he was woken for this campaign. How the chapter was doing, the way you ask about a person's well-being, the way someone who cares about an institution asks about the health of the thing it is an institution for. You told him what you could. He listened with the complete attention of someone who has nothing more pressing to do, which is one of the stranger qualities of a Dreadnought's consciousness, the way that the absence of urgency creates a quality of presence that is different from anything in your own experience of attention. He told you, at the end of the conversation, that it gets easier. He did not specify what it gets easier in relation to. He did not need to. You understood that he was speaking from the specific vantage of someone who had been doing this for a very long time, longer than you could see the end of from your current position, and who had arrived at something on the other side of everything you are currently in the middle of, some accommodation with it, some equilibrium that was not happiness exactly and not peace exactly, but was functional and sustainable and real. You thought about that for a long time afterward, whether the thing he was describing was something you wanted to arrive at, whether the equilibrium of something that has been at this long enough to have stopped being disturbed by it is a goal to work toward, or a warning about what the work eventually does to you. You did not resolve this question. It is one of the ones that lives on the list. Not as something to be solved, but as something to be carried, one of the open questions that the life you are living will eventually answer in its own time and in its own way. The Dreadnoughts sleep between their deployments in stasis containment, preserved at the minimal level of function that keeps the consciousness within the sarcophagus alive without requiring the full operation of the chassis. They wake for wars and sleep in the intervals. Their experience of time therefore radically different from your own. A sequence of awakenings separated by gaps they do not experience as gaps, each waking continuous with the last in their internal experience, even though from the outside years or decades have passed. They age without aging, accumulate experience without accumulating all the time between the experiences, carry a version of the chapter's history that is both more complete and more discontinuous than any other members. You wonder sometimes what you will be like in the centuries ahead if you survive them. Whether the equilibrium the Dreadnought described comes for everyone eventually, whether it is a function of time and experience, or whether it is something specific to the particular consciousness within that specific chassis, shaped by 10,000 years of being exactly what it is in a way that your own much shorter career cannot yet have produced in you. You do not know. You will find out. That is the condition of being in the middle of something rather than at the end of it. The fundamental epistemic situation of a consciousness that is still experiencing rather than looking back on what was experienced. The drop pod is falling again. It is always falling again. This is the condition of being a space marine in the 41st millennium, the state of permanent deployment, the absence of any terminal point beyond the one that arrives as damage too severe to repair, and the installation of what remains of you in a Dreadnought chassis so that you can continue to fall in drop pods, just in a different container. You have been on this particular world for 6 hours, and the situation is what the chapter's tactical assessors would describe as developing, which means it is not resolved and is not going to be resolved in the next 6 hours either, which means you are going to be here for longer than the initial assessment suggested, which has been true of every single engagement in your career, with a frequency that suggests the initial assessments may be systematically optimistic in ways that nobody has addressed, because addressing them would require admitting that the Imperium is perpetually fighting more war than it has resources for, and that Space Marine deployments are a band-aid applied to wounds that require surgery. The bolter in your hands has been fired today approximately 200 times. The sound of it is as familiar as breathing. The weight of it is as familiar as the weight of your own arm. You have maintained this weapon through a dozen campaigns, and it has not failed you, and you have not failed it. The relationship between a Space Marine and his bolter being one of the few relationships in your life that has a straightforward character, and that you do not have to manage in the way you manage the others. The enemy on this world is chaos. It is usually chaos, or orcs, or tyrannids, or some combination of the above, or one of the dozen other categories of existential threat to humanity that the Imperium's galaxy contains in such abundance that the Departamento Munitorum has a standardized form for categorizing them and a filing system for the reports that follow each engagement that occupies, across the entirety of the Imperium, more physical space than some planetary populations. Today, it is chaos. Specifically, it is the cultists of a world that has been slipping toward corruption for decades, the slow process that the Chaos Gods prefer to the dramatic ones because the slow process is harder to interrupt once it has started, and this world's process started long enough ago that interrupting it now requires the specific kind of intervention that a Space Marine represents. You hold the line. You have always held the line. The line has been in different places across the galaxy and has faced different things on different days and has required different things from you on each of those days. But the fundamental action of holding it has been the constant, the thing that does not change, the function that everything else exists to support. You were created to hold the line. Your 19 organs and your centuries of training and your centuries of service and the weight of everything on the list you carry, all of it is in service of this one continuing thing. And you are very good at it. This is worth saying clearly. You are extraordinarily, specifically, comprehensively good at exactly this. At standing between humanity and the things that want to destroy it, and not moving, not breaking, not being pushed back to the point where the things behind you are no longer protected. You are the best at this that the human species has ever produced. 10,000 years of refinement have produced in you something that is the pinnacle of what a weapon designed to protect can be. And the fact that being this thing involves everything that has been described does not change the fact that you are it, fully and completely and without reservation. This is why it sucks to be a space marine, not any one thing on the list, all of it together. The full weight of a post-human existence in service of an imperium that is vast and broken and necessary, carried every day in armor that has carried it before and will carry it again, in service of something that is enormous and worth the cost, and also simply heavy, exhaustingly, relentlessly, beautifully heavy. You hold the line. You will hold it tomorrow. You will hold it for as long as you exist. And when you finally cannot hold it anymore, they will put what remains of you in a metal box, and you will hold it from inside that. For the Emperor, for humanity, for the 10 billion worlds whose inhabitants will go to sleep tonight not knowing your name and not needing to, because you are awake and the line is held and the darkness is, for one more night, not here. That is why you do it. Close your eyes. The Astronomicon burns. Your chapter stands vigilant on a dozen worlds. Your brothers are there in their ancient armor, helmets scanning the dark, bolters ready, the machine spirits of their suits humming with the patience of things that have been at this for a very long time and have learned not to be in a hurry. It sucks to be a space marine. It also, at the very center of everything, matters more than anything else. That is the part they never tell you. You have to become what you become, and live what you live, and carry what you carry, and then you understand it. Not because someone explained it, because you are it, because the armor is yours, and the weapon is yours, and the centuries of service are yours, and the weight is yours, and it has all become, in the deepest and most irrevocable sense, who you are. For the Emperor, it is the hour before dawn on a world whose name you will remember and whose coordinates are already filed in the chapter's operational records, alongside the after-action reports and the casualty data and the logistical summaries that turn a campaign into documentation. The engagement is not over, but the immediate pressure has reduced, the night phase of operations producing the particular quiet that is not peace, but is the temporary absence of active violence, the gap between what has been done and what will be done when the light returns, and the forces on both sides have had their brief intervals to regroup and resupply and assess. You stand your watch. This is something you have done 10,000 times before in 10,000 configurations, on walls and in tree lines and in the ruins of structures that were intact when the campaign began, in the vacuum of space and in the crushing pressure of deep bunkers and in the specific stillness of a firebase at night with the looms turned low and the sentries at their positions and the exhausted soldiers of whatever guard regiment you are operating alongside, getting what sleep the situation permits. You have stood watch in conditions that the training programs used as their worst-case scenarios and in conditions that those programs had not imagined. You have stood watch long enough that the practice of it has become something your body does with a completeness that requires very little of your conscious attention, the physical maintenance of the watch, the scanning, the monitoring of your armor's instruments, all of this handled at the background level of your processing, while the foreground is available for other things. You think, on watch, about the ordinary human beings on the worlds that are not this world. The ones who are asleep right now in their HAB units and their farm cottages and their void station berths, who do not know that this engagement is happening. who know in the abstract that the Imperium is always at war, but who live their lives at a remove from that knowledge that allows it to be something they carry without being crushed by it. You think about what they are dreaming, not specifically, not the content of individual dreams, but the fact of ordinary human dreaming, the nightly surrender to unconsciousness that the catalepsian node has made unavailable to you, the complete absence from the world that sleeping provides to those who can achieve it fully. You do not resent them this. You made your peace with the loss of it a long time ago, and the peace has held, which is the most you can ask of any peace. The world around you is quiet with the specific quiet of a place that is between catastrophes, the soil still carrying the vibration of the day's artillery, and the air still thick with the smell of burnt material and the specific acrid chemical signature of weapons fire from multiple sources, but the immediate sensory environment reduced to the night sounds of whatever biology this world has that survived the campaign's current phase. You listen to it. This is something you have developed over the years, the practice of listening to the biology of a world in the intervals between engagements, attending to the evidence of life that continues through and despite the violence imposed on it, the insects and the wind and the settling of damaged structures, and occasionally the sound of something larger moving at the edge of the firelight range. The stars above you are the same stars that were above the hive on Caldris Secundus, if Caldris Secundus had been your world, the same stars that have been above every world you have ever stood on, the same stars that were above every engagement in the 10,000 years of the Imperium's history. You cannot see them all. The atmosphere of this world and the fires still burning on its surface and the glow of the camp behind you all reduce what is visible to a fraction of what is there. But the Astronomicon is there, always, even when it is not visible to the naked eye, perceptible to you as the background warmth of the psychic spectrum that your years of service have attuned you to reading, the beacon burning 50,000 light years from where you stand, burning because of what it costs, burning because the cost is paid willingly and unwillingly and continuously by the souls the black ships deliver to it, burning because if it stops burning, the ships in the warp lose their way, and the fleets that protect the Imperium are blind, and the civilization that has kept humanity alive for 10,000 years in a galaxy that would otherwise have exterminated it begins to come apart. You know what the Astronomicon costs. This is knowledge that most space marines have in the abstract. In the formal doctrinal sense, the Astronomicon is maintained by the Emperor's will and the service of the Adeptus Astra Telepathicus choir members, 1,000 psychers per day consumed in the maintenance of the beacon. You know it not only abstractly, but in the specific weight that knowledge has when it has been present in your consciousness for long enough to have become part of the furniture of your thinking. Present without demanding attention the way the important things are present, always there when you reach for it. 1,000 per day. You have been serving for approximately 180 years. In the time you have been serving, the Astronomicon has consumed approximately 65 million psychers in the maintenance of the beacon. 65 million people who were born different and collected by the black ships and processed on Holy Terror and assigned their roles, some to the choir and some to astropathic service and some to other purposes, and who served in those roles until they were used up by them and who are gone now, and who the Imperium marks in its records with the specific notation that indicates that a resource has been expended and replaced. 65 million in your service lifetime alone. 10,000 years of this. The arithmetic is not something you perform often because the arithmetic, fully inhabited, is the kind of thing that the chaplains would want to discuss with you and that you are not sure you want to discuss with the chaplains. But you know it, and knowing it is part of the weight, part of what makes the work matter in the way that it matters, the specific gravity of a purpose that is paid for in those terms. You stand here, on this watch, on this world, in this particular night between this particular engagement's two phases, because of that cost. not in any simple transactional sense, not because you owe the psychers in the choir anything that can be expressed as a debt, but in the sense that the cost is real and was paid, and the thing it purchased is the continued existence of the civilization you are defending, and you are here defending it, and the connection between those two facts is not invisible to you. The dawn will come, the engagement will resume, the drop pods will fall again on some other world, and the bolter will fire again, and the line will be held again, and the darkness will be pushed back again for one more day, one more campaign, one more century of continuous service. And somewhere on Holy Terror, the Astronomicon will burn, and somewhere on the black ships, psychers will be sleeping in their cells, afraid and bound, and en route to what awaits them, not knowing yet the full weight of what they are moving toward. And somewhere in the Eye of Terror, the traitor legions will be planning their next Black Crusade, 10,000 years of preparations and setbacks and renewed preparations, the patience of things sustained by the warp in a state that ordinary time cannot erode. And you will be here. You will be on this watch or the next watch or the one after that, in this armor or armor like it, with these brothers or brothers who came after, in the service of this emperor and this imperium and this galaxy that is very old and very dark and very full of things that are trying to end what humanity has built here. This is why it sucks to be a space marine. Not the 19 organs, not the surgery and the training and the centuries of war, not the brothers you have buried, or the chaos gods who want your soul, or the mathematics of the Astronomicon, or the weight of 10,000 years pressing down on everything you do. All of it together, the full weight, carried every day, in armor older than most civilizations, in service to something that cannot be resolved, cannot be won, cannot be set down and walked away from, but can be served, truly and completely, and with everything you are. For as long as you are something, this is what you are. This is what you have chosen to be, or been chosen to be, or become, through the specific sequence of events that started on a hive world, or a feudal world, or a death world, when a recruiting team arrived and found a 13-year-old who had what they were looking for. You have what they were looking for. You have had it for a long time. You are going to have it for a long time still. The dawn is coming. The line needs holding. Close your eyes. You are covered. We have the watch. For the Emperor, for the Imperium, for the 10 billion worlds whose people are sleeping tonight in the dark between the stars. We are awake. We are always awake.